Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering, discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions of the thing. We are smack dab in the middle of our summer of Star Wars here, wrapping up our time with the prequels today with Revenge of the Sith. But before we get into that, a little bit of housekeeping for you. This show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com. So, slash that nerdy site. Gotta read the whole thing if I want to get people to give us money, I suppose. If you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it. But if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Go write it on a bathroom stall somewhere. Go just write youtube.com slash that nerdy site. I'd love to hear that somebody finds us that way. Joining me today, we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's been a long day, but I
agree.
I've made it through, and we're going to record this podcast, and then I'm going to go see Black Widow, the first Marvel movie in theaters in like a year and a half. So that's going to be fun evening for me ahead. Also joining us, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hello there.
Hello there. And Frank Bazzani joining us. How you doing, Frank?
Doing good. I was doing better before Cam stole my bit, but you know.
Sorry. No, you have a follow-up line, though. You have a follow-up line.
Yeah, because it's General Kenobi.
Yeah.
General Kenobi. Yes. So yes, today is going to be all about Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Originally released May 19th, 2005. Other notable releases of the time, which just every time I do one of these, I'm like, wow, yeah, I'm feeling old, I guess. Sin City came out April 1st of this year. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy came out April 29th. Best Picture winner Crash came out May 6th.
Oof.
Madagascar
That's a big oof right there.
Came out on May 27th. The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants came out June 1st, and Batman Begins came out June 15th, kicking off
another slapping film.
The Nolan verse of the Batman trilogy.
Back-to-back Sisterhood of Traveling Pants and Batman Begins, both incredible movies.
Yeah.
It was a great double feature.
Yeah. So this movie has a runtime of 2 hours and 20 minutes. In the Star Wars film timeline, of course, this came out after Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, on May 16th, 2002. And the next Star Wars movie that we would get, when we didn't think we were going to really get any more after this one, ended up being The Clone Wars, which came out August 15th, 2008. So yeah, that was a time. This is all well before Disney takes over and buys Lucasfilm for, the paltry sum these days of $4 billion. But yeah. Diving in, as he has with the other prequels here, George Lucas took writing and directing credits on this one. And while he had a co-screenwriter on the last one, he was back to going it alone this time around, which weirdly I thought was better, but it might also just been like it's a real it was an easier plane to land as opposed to like hitting the middle the middle chunk with episode 2 there. I don't think we have any new faces in this one, because of course Ewan McGregor is back once again as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Natalie Portman back as Queen Amidala / Padme, or just Padme, I guess, in this point. Like, there's no queen. She's like barely even a senator. Is she a senator in this one? She's just pretty much.
She is a senator still. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hayden Christensen back once again as Anakin Skywalker. Ian McDiarmid as Senator Palpatine / Emperor Palpatine. Samuel Jackson as Mace Windu, Jimmy Smits returning as Senator Bail Organa, Frank Oz as Yoda, Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, Christopher Lee in a very brief appearance as Count Dooku / Darth Tyrannus, Tamura Morrison in a pretty much entirely CGI performance, now as the clones, but in this one in particular, Commander Cody, Ahmed Best in here very briefly as Jar Jar Binks, and Kenny Baker in his final appearance as R2-D2 here. And then we also get a returning Peter Mayhew as a Chewbacca cameo, of course, as Yoda goes to help the Wookiees on Kashyyyk. Trivia, they have a bad feeling about this. Anyone want to give a shout to who it is?
It's Obi-Wan.
Yep.
Right when they are about to enter the flagship.
Actually, I think they're they're either it's either when he's about to crash into the flagship or like when he's just
I said
landed.
land. I should have said crash when they crash into the land ship or the flagship. Yeah.
Yes.
The doors are starting to close, and that's when he says, "I have a bad feeling about this."
There you go. In the galactic timeline of things, Revenge of the Sith takes place in 19 BBY, Battle Before Yavin, or Before the Battle of Yavin. Also notable of 19 BBY, in addition to pretty much everything that's going on in the Bad Batch right now, as well as, obviously a whole bunch of the end of the Clone Wars series arc. Ezra Bridger of Rebels was born to Mira and Ephraim Bridger on Lothal. So, he'll start to play his role in the galaxy soon. Other trivia we have.
Wait, Ezra from Star Wars Rebels?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's the same age as Luke?
Yeah.
Yep.
The Star Wars Rebels takes place... Star Wars Rebels as a series... Well, Star Wars Rebels takes place during, I think, 12 BBY?
5 BBY.
5, yeah.
So that's why it's
so
it's not that much.
it's taken place when Ezra and Luke are both 14.
15, yeah.
They're 14, 15, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but it goes for a couple of years. It gets close to...
It gets close to, up until prior to the event, maybe a year prior to the events of Rogue One.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the last big battles before both sides took major hits in the finale battle of Rebels. So
yeah, Rebels also has an epilogue type thing that peppers in where those characters went during the original trilogy, and I mentioned during the Return of the Jedi one, there's even a nod that Rex, who makes a return in Rebels, may or may not have been Old Man Santa Claus in Han's group on Endor, but he definitely fought at the Battle of Endor, is made canon and mentioned in there. So yeah, they kind of while yes, most of it takes place prior to the original trilogy, they do start to toy with, and here's a little bit of what happened, during the original trilogy to this cast of characters. But anyway,
very interesting.
Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen trained for 2 months in fencing and fitness in preparation for their epic battle. As a result of their practice, the speed at which Kenobi and Vader engage the duel in the completed movie is the speed in which it was filmed. It was not digitally accelerated. Mm-hmm. George Lucas allowed his friend Steven Spielberg to help design some sequences during pre-production. This was partly because Spielberg wanted the experience of using the previs techniques pioneered by Industrial Light and Magic, as he was going to use them for War of the Worlds, which also came out in 2005. It was also because Lucas felt that his roles as writer, director, executive producer, and financier were taking up too much of his time, and he needed another director to bounce ideas off. Spielberg's main contribution was the climactic lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin. Apart from providing the voice of R2-D2 and the heavy breathing of Darth Vader, which he has done since Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, Ben Burtt provided the voices for every battle droid, super battle droid, and buzz droid. In the duel with Count Dooku, the imprisoned Palpatine originally had more dialogue. I almost pulled this into last week's too, but since it was more tied to this movie, figured I'd bring it here. One of his lines pertained to Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, in which Palpatine exposed Dooku as paying the Tusken Raiders to kidnap, torture, and kill Shmi Skywalker. Bum, bum, bum. Pulling this...
I wish they would have left that in.
Yeah.
That always bothered me. Why did that ever just randomly happen all of a sudden?
Yeah. Just...
So, if he was oh, you paid them to do it, I'd be oh, at least there's a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, no, that doesn't make reasons because Tusken Raiders aren't mercenaries. They don't take jobs like that.
I guess that's true, too.
Yeah, I would like that less, I think. Yeah, I like the fact that it's
a
random
the Raiders
thing
just did a Raider thing.
Yeah.
The Raiders did a Raider thing. They attacked a moisture farm, kidnapped a person, and did what the Tusken Raiders do, which looking at it now through a lens of 2021, pretty racist, but Yeah.
Well, there you go. Pulling this, of course, for former nerd and just robot aficionado Chloe. Gary Oldman had agreed to be the voice of General Grievous, but pulled out of the movie because it was being made using actors who are not part of the Screen Actors Guild, of which Oldman is a member. As we've discussed before on the show, George Lucas once quit the Writers Guild, Directors Guild, and the Motion Picture Association of America over a dispute concerning Star Wars Episode V: The Empire Strikes Back, and has not been able to work with Guild actors since. The role was read by Duncan Young on set, and finally voiced by Matthew Wood, who, being a Lucasfilm employee, submitted his reading under the name of Alan Smithy. So shout out to you, Chloe, and your weird fascination and love of General Grievous. Good luck getting your Twitter account back. And, for those that don't know or don't follow her, she has created an alt account, Echo Clocation, that you can go follow on Twitter.
Quick side question, I guess.
Yes.
And this might be a trivia topic for next week, but the sequel trilogy, right? Like, those actors, are they letting them use members of the Screen Actors Guild in the sequel trilogy films? Because it's still Star Wars, and they're still not showing any credits before the movie ends. But George Lucas isn't involved, so I don't know.
Well, that's no longer a strict requirement anymore.
Yeah, that's not been a requirement quite a time ago.
Yeah,
in part because of things like Star Wars, but I think they can use.
They can because Disney because George Lucas burned those bridges. Disney didn't burn those bridges. Disney often employs and is a massive employer of the Screen Actors Guild.
Oh, no, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's why I was like, because I thought about it again of is Harrison Ford not a member of the Screen Actors Guild? Is Mark Hamill or Carrie Fisher not members of the Screen Actors Guild, or did they just get a special dispensation back in the 80s? But oh yeah, you can be in this movie. It's fine because you're already signed.
They may not have. It was not up until. Well, I'm trying to think what year it was. It was the same year, or it was the year before Back to the Future came out, where
84.
So the Screen Actors Guild had a big strike the year before Back to the Future came out.
84,
and that's when a lot of things changed, and not all actors in Hollywood were Screen Actors Guild workers.
Employees.
Just members rather.
Yeah, members. Yeah,
it's a guild. So rather than it that being the case, it was more likely that Harrison Ford also little known fact, Harrison Ford was a professional carpenter, a set design carpenter, while he was trying to get acting roles. He was a tradesman.
Little known fact. That's one of the the iconic, especially if you're an actor. That's one of the iconic hey, don't think you can make it. Or don't think you'll never make it. Harrison Ford was a carpenter. That's one of those stories. It looks like at least just a quick Google search. Mark Hamill, I believe. I mean, he's being celebrated or in this SAG-AFTRA post from 2018. So presumably he's in there. And I mean that we don't need to dive down the rabbit hole of unions and whatnot. But I know just from my time in working in theater and stuff. You can always get exemptions. You just have to basically apply to the union and and basically get
it would be detrimental. It would be detrimental to my career not to reprise this role.
Yeah.
That I previously had before I was a member of the guild. There's plenty of exemptions that they would make off of that, but also especially with Disney doesn't have that problem that Lucas had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no, that's why I was wondering by the sequel trilogy if they were just
by the sequel
hang
trilogy,
on, this seems way too many people in that movie are SAG members. That's why I was hang on, this seems
Yep.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
During the production of this movie, Lucas also filmed a scene for Star Wars Episode V: The Empire Strikes Back. Ian McDiarmid, who first played Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars Episode VI: Return of the Jedi, was filmed in prosthetic makeup for use in the character's first appearance as a hologram in Empire, replacing the unknown woman and the voice of Clive Revel and the monkey eyes that we discussed when we talked about Empire Strikes Back. Bring it full circle. This is the first Star Wars movie never to be released on VHS in the United States. And
that is a good fact.
Because obviously we're into the DVD era by the time this one comes around. And so it's just one of those like I feel bad for any collector out there who's like getting every box thing. It's
Yeah.
like I look at my Simpsons box set of DVDs behind me, and I'm like, that's never going to be complete because they stopped making those a long time ago. I think they only made it up to like season 18 or something like that. But anyway, Wilhelm scream. Early on during the dogfight, as a laser cannon is destroyed, one of the clone troopers running by is sent. I believe this was actually in the sorry, not early on in the movie, but early on during the fight at Grievous's place, I think. Laser cannon is destroyed. One of the clone troopers running by is sent flying from the explosion, and the Wilhelm scream is heard. In the original showings in theaters, a Wilhelm scream was also heard when a clone is shot out of his fighter in the dogfight, as the camera makes the long shot watching him float through space. While the shot remains, the scream was removed. That's like as much as this the Star Wars movie has never gotten behind you actually wouldn't hear any of this stuff in space, save that one moment we'll get in Last Jedi. Having a Wilhelm scream as that clone trooper is just like floating his like dead body in space, which like is as this trivia pointed out, like you see that for a long time. At the beginning of the movie, it's like, oh, okay, that's dark, but the Wilhelm scream would have definitely made it a different feel. Anyway, that's all I pulled in for the trivia today. So what do we think? How does it hold up? I talked with Logan about this at length, I think, before we recorded That News You Care About earlier this week, because I had already sat down and watched the movie. I watched it like last Sunday. So I will kick things off with this one of, as down on Attack of the Clowns as we were last week, I was surprised at how immediately much better I thought this movie was. Not only does it kick off with a fun, enjoyable action sequence with all the shit going on in space, including one of the trivia things I didn't pull in, but there's like an Easter egg of like the kitchen sink is in there. There's a kitchen sink hidden among the debris of one of the ships or something, because they were like, we're throwing everything in, even the kitchen sink. But so that sequence is really cool and exciting, especially given we're 6 movies in here and we've seen relatively little wars among the stars, especially in this prequel trilogy. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then just as I said to Logan earlier in the week, like brash and cocky Anakin is way more engaging and way more interesting of a character than like moody, brooding creeper Anakin from the last movie. So I thought Hayden Christensen was immediately a lot more fun to watch in this one. And then they clearly went all out on like the CG, in some cases to like a detriment to the film, especially watching it now 16 years later. But overall, I had a much more enjoyable time with this one. And yeah, so what did everybody else think? Frank, let me throw it to you first.
Yeah, so I still really enjoyed this movie. Back in the day, this was my favorite of the prequel trilogy, and it had a lot of different things that I really liked about it, and I was curious if that was still going to remain. And I think it does after watching it. Like, it's not a perfect movie, and there's still some things that are like, it's a little bit like, I think, long in some parts and still a little bit boring in some parts, and I think there's some things that still could have probably been done better. But it I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. We're like coming off of Attack of the Clones. Like, it's immediately, even in the first scene, it's just a better movie in so many different ways. And it just kind of maintains to be a better movie throughout, I think, pretty much the entire thing. Like I said, it's not perfect, but I still think it is the entire way through. I think it's a better, more fun, interesting movie. There's I love the set piece at the beginning. I love the different ship designs there. I also love it's filmed super well. Like the way you're just kind of zipping around and flying around through ships. Like it literally is, like you said, it's a war in the stars. And that's it's a really good thing. And I also I wish we got more out of Dooku, because I feel like that's kind of a shitty ending for Dooku, but I do like Palpatine kind of goading him into it, and Dooku knows that Palpatine is who he is, and no one else does. So I think that's a really interesting thing. But I just feel like it's such it kind of ends up anticlimactic a bit. I feel like they could have done more even with that same setup than what we kind of got. But that's just kind of going based off the beginning. And part of the thing I don't like about the entire trilogy, but even this movie, is that we never get obviously it's Palpatine, but we never get like one great villain. It's like, oh, there's Darth Maul, he's cool, he's gone, and then it's like, oh, there's Dooku, and then he's gone, and it's like, oh, and oh, he's gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you like all of them, but then none of them get to stick around to do anything. They're just there to play their role, and then they get blown up. And like, I wish there was more like cool bad guys, but obviously I guess they have to kind of get everybody out of the way so that Vader can be the like it bad guy. Yeah, it's not probably going on too long there.
No, it's not at all. It's fine. It's almost like the parallel I was thinking of as you were kind of describing that is like, it's as if the original trilogy didn't have Vader and our bad guys were Moff Tarkin and then Boba Fett and then Jabba, and like how connected would we have felt to that arc of the original trilogy? The fact that Palpatine is the villain, but we also know that he's the villain and we know where his story is going to end does make this a very lackluster element. Having that kind of like it's disappointing to I think like have that, but overall like still a fun, like the villains that we get are enjoyable, and I appreciate that like all of them get way more time and more stuff to do in the Clone Wars. So we'll get to like if you want, more time with them, it's out there and available for you. Logan, what are your thoughts on Revenge of the Sith here?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought that it was the best prequel movie. That's only been, I think, that was reconfirmed just watching the first two. But no, I think Revenge of the Sith, a little bit like how I said for Return of the Jedi, it is the movie that kind of made the series actually feel like a space opera. This, again, is a movie that makes the series feel like a space opera. Like, I think it leans into the operatic nature of it really well. I think it, in all the good and bad terms, right? Like, it's over the top at times. It's kind of outlandish and super dramatic and grand. But I think more often than not, it really pulls it together. And I think more often than not, those beats really hit. I actually disagree with Frank. I like the fact that they just like take out Dooku so early on, because it's such a cool, like, oh shit, like that boss is just done basically. And I like the fact that it was just like, we're done with him. Sorry, Chloe, I've never really gotten Grievous. Again, he's a little bit like Boba Fett. Like, I'm just like, he's cool, but like he's just kind of like, he kind of sucks a little bit too.
I mean, if you're a fan of lightsabers, I don't know how you don't like General Grievous, because he's got four of them and he can do like crazy spinny stuff with them.
Is a cool like concept, and then it's like, all right, yeah, he's here. He gets like two big moments. But no, I mean, I think me and you talked about this a little bit before we recorded earlier in the week, obviously, but like I think it's got more moments that are just like, that's dope than the first two movies in the trilogy combined. Like there's so much happening constantly. Like I don't really think that the movie ever has like too long of a lull. Like you're pretty constantly going quickly because there's so much shit that happens in this movie. It is so loaded, and in like some ways, like it is the most just like you were flying through this film of like any of the movies out of like the 9, arguably. Like you were booking it to get to the end of this film. I love the end of the movie mostly, right? But like I think it ties together.
She's lost the will to live. Oh my god!
Yeah, but
that's
like,
really
but like
stupid.
even that, like, yeah, like, but like
that's
I think,
so damn stupid.
But like I think the movie, like this to me, watching it and just kind of experiencing it again, this feels like the movie George Lucas wanted the prequels to be, right? And he just had to be like, oh, but I have to do a trilogy, so like let me make the other two. But like this feels like the most fully formed and fleshed out, and like by far the most thought has been put into all the beats, because like he's been thinking about how did it all fall apart for 30 years at this point, right? Like he's had so much time to think about this movie that I think it feels like that watching it, right? Like you see it reflected in what you're kind of watching, how the characters are acting, how the plot is kind of moving forward. And then like yet again for the prequel trilogy, I say Ewan McGregor is just so fantastic in this film. And this to me is probably the movie where I'm most like, God damn, I wish we had Obi-Wan Kenobi be the main character of this trilogy. because he's so good in this film, and he in a lot of ways is like the co-main character in this movie. Like they really give him a lot of time to just kind of have his own arc and story fleshed out.
I mean, he gets the top billing in the last two movies, and he's I think only behind Liam Neeson. He might be behind Liam Neeson and Natalie Portman in the first one, but yeah.
And like I think Obi-Wan is a great character in this movie because he fleshes out the other characters that he interacts with, whether it's Padme or Anakin, kind of primarily. But yeah, I mean, it's great. It has one of my favorite like closing shots to kind of get into like favorite moments in a minute of the series. Like I love the actual like kind of closing shot of like them looking at the twin suns again on like Tatooine. I think is a really nice kind of like final like series of moments. And so I liked that touch. I like how it kind of brings everything full circle. And the fact that like even though it's super dark, like it is definitely the darkest Star Wars movie up to this point, it does kind of offer you that faint glimpse of like a new hope being born, even in like the ashes of the Republic and the Jedi.
Yeah, I obviously I get what they're doing in that moment for the end of this one, but since I have zero connection to like Lars and Beru really, Owen and Beru, since we didn't spend really any time with them across this trilogy, I like it's one of those like, okay, like it feels cheap because you're just trying to tug and draw on, you know, the emotion of the original moment more so than like make this its own moment for me. But
I think that if I can, like, I think that works for me. Like, I don't think it's about Owen and like, I don't think it's about them at all, right? Like, I think that is a moment about Obi-Wan and Luke in that moment, right? Like, I liked it because like you get the idea of like Luke is always looking at the twin sons because like maybe that's what his uncle did, and like he kind of got that from him. And then like eventually his uncle kind of became like the gruff like fucking you can't go to the Star Academy until the next like season and next harvest kind of thing. Like he got like worn down a little bit, I think, by 20 years of an oppressive empire. But I in my head kind of like I like the idea that he got that from his uncle, like still young here, still dreaming of like something potentially, and so like that moment being a nice connective tissue to again what is in my top like 3 or 4 favorite Star Wars moments of Luke looking at the twin sons. I think it's a cool moment, and like Obi-Wan being there as well. It works for me in that regard.
Just doing like the mustache thing, I like that, where he was like playing with
yeah,
it, and I was like, he's
pulling
doing
up
like the
on the
old
mustache.
wise man, kind of thing. He had like the hood up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was like, he's the transformation into Ben.
Yeah, no, I really feel like that is a, like, don't get me wrong, like, I've definitely had those moments in other films and other properties for sure, where, like, you have those shoestrings tying the ideas together. I did not get that, but anyway. Do you have anything else, Logan?
I mean, we'll get into, like, other stuff in a minute.
Just my last thought on that is I will be very amused if in the upcoming Obi-Wan Kenobi series, like, I hope that that does a good job or an interesting job of fleshing out Owen and Beru, so that I can go back and watch this movie and be like, oh, I know where those guys are going to go and how tragic it's going to be, what happens to them in A New Hope. And I just don't have that yet, basically. So I'm hopeful that it's there and
burned alive.
will be added into the canon. But I now, for your sake, Logan, I hope that like every episode just has a moment of Owen just looking off at the twin sons.
I would love that, right?
And
It's
little
such a
like
great,
5-year-old Luke or whatever, like looking up at him, being like, "What are you doing, Uncle Owen?"
Sure.
Just thinking about the universe, son.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm thinking about my stepbrother who's no longer
dreaming.
with us.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about my stepbrother that I've known for probably less than 24 hours, but who I have to raise his kid now.
Yeah. Cameron, what are your thoughts here on Revenge of the Sith?
Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith, I understand why it's their favorite. It has the momentum of a film that the other two just lack in a lot of ways, especially episode 1, which we've commented before, lacks a lot of momentum in getting from like point to point and drags in places. It has so much to do that it cannot afford to drag at all. I would note that but also because of that, this film never gives any scene time to breathe. There is several missed moments of poignancy that were probably acted on while like on studio and stage, but cut and edited for the sake of it. We also get a lot of those weird transitional edits that episode 1 had way too many of that we talked about. We get a bunch of those, especially as events get tighter and tighter and tighter to the climactic coup scene between the Jedi, like the remaining Jedi Council on Coruscant versus Palpatine. You like this entire, like, as things get closer and closer to that, and then I would actually say they kind of keep that odd transitioning throughout the rest of the film, especially as it bounces back and forth between Anakin on Mustafar, as he's like embracing his role as Darth Vader, so to speak. Yeah, there's just a lot of things that, like, you know, and a lot of lines are used there that are, like, to Logan's credit, he does reference them. Like, the dialogue is the most operatic, dramatic that this trilogy has had so far.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Here's the
thing.
That's what I would argue. Like, that is a scene I think that does get to breathe, and I think the reason, like, we remember that scene and that speech, and the reason it became memeified is because we get a lot of time there, and also tying into the operatic nature of the comics.
Yeah, because they're at an opera. Yeah, they're literally at a space opera.
Yes. A Mon Calamari opera, which I did not know prior to this rewatch.
What's really interesting in that scene as well is that you get to see those seeds that have been planted years ago get tilled and watered and are starting to finally, like, show fruit, and like it's a really great scene. But we get so few of those in what really could have, in a lot of scenes that could have had a lot more. The scene where Obi-Wan watches the security hologram, and then talks to Padme afterwards, and it's like that abrupt cut, just showing up, like, you know, there's a lot of decisions being made here that had to be made for the sake of time, of course, and like I get that, but this film, I think, suffers from its overbearing load. It has to carry so much forward in so many different ways. Now, on the flip side of it, one thing I want to say, though, that I want to point out before I get any further into it and I forget again, ship design. I love the prototype ships that we see for all the classic ships that we'll see in A New Hope. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the introduction of these agile fighters that have the deployable pop-up wings, the proto-TIE fighters, to the clone troopers using these proto-X-wings. I love a lot of the idea of, like, finally we get to see the technology in a more prototypical, like, more prototype versions of what we will then see as, like, the future in further Star Wars, where previously we've been getting a lot of retro-futuristic ship designs.
Yeah.
And so it's been cool to see that happen. And I think they do that a ton with characters, like places that people go to, environments. I was thinking of the word. Environments that they're in, and just tons and tons of stuff. But a lot of things also, like, are really difficult. Like, Anakin is this, like has been trusted to become a Jedi Knight. He has been out there fighting in the war. Like, he is, like, clearly they make a point of saying, like, oh, he's really well respected. But Mace Windu don't trust him.
Because he's too close to the Chancellor.
Yeah, well, yeah, like, don't get me wrong, they give reasons for it, but they never give enough. When Anakin goes to Mace Windu with the news, like, Palpatine is Darth Sidious, mm-hmm. like, he basically confessed it to me. One, also, sometimes dialogue doesn't, like, there's weird withholding of information that doesn't make sense in the moment. Like, I think he's the other Sith. Bro, you just got confessed to that he's the other Sith.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't say I'm Darth Sidious, I'm the Sith Lord, but he's like I know the dark side, blah blah blah. Yeah.
Yeah, it lays it on pretty thick. Also, like, the entire time, it speaks a lot to, and I like the way that Palpatine calls out Yoda, just like, you're you and your order's arrogance. But on the flip side, I think, I'm sorry, what was the actor who plays Palpatine? I can't remember his name right now.
Ian McDermott.
Ian McDermott. He owns every scene he's in. He chews on every piece of scenery. And the moment they put him in the prosthetic makeup, he is just so good at what he's doing. And it's like, I love that we've been seeing this like kind old jolly Palpatine. Oh, good show, Anakin. Oh, Obi-Wan. Right you are, Master Yoda. Yada yada. And now we get like this, just like mask off, full evil, like deep voice monologues.
I hate everything he does in the Mace Windu scene. Like the Mace Windu scene's really
I'm
just like, what the hell is that? That's like so far down the campy bad rabbit hole that I'm just like, no, like pull it back. Like George should have really told you to pull it back a little bit on that one. Like how does Anakin like obviously Anakin has lost all reason at that point anyway or whatever, but like how does he see that happen and be like, yeah, no, Mace Windu's the bad guy here?
Well, I actually understand that in that moment because Mace Windu, up to this point, has been like the stalwart keeper of the code throughout these 3 films, all this stuff, and all of a sudden at the very end, Mace Windu, out of fear, betrays his own moral code and is going to kill Palpatine.
His own moral code. We saw him behead like Jango Fett in the last movie.
That was in combat, and that was an honorable.
This was also in combat.
This is in combat. Yeah, I don't know. Like
he surrendered though. Like that's the thing. Palpatine surrendered at this point.
No. Like,
but this is also
it's obviously a ploy by Palpatine
to. Yeah, he's also a Sith Lord. So, like, what does that surrender means? Yeah.
Well, when is like anyway? Not to get into the weeds here at this point, but I really feel like between like I really enjoy a lot about this film. There are like I think this film probably has like the number of my favorite parts of the trilogy, and is half of that just memes? Sure. But there's a reason why this film is the most memed out of the trilogy. Because it has those great meme moments. And why prequel memes are even a thing is because we have scenes like Darth Plagueis the Wise. We have the it's treason then.
Mm-hmm.
We have these awesome scenes because when this movie hits them, very much like in episode 1, I feel like, when it hits them so well and hits it so great. And I just feel like this film has a lot of those moments, even though I think story-wise, and if we had a problem with like how little story like is going on for the majority of Phantom Menace, the opposite is true in this film, where there's so much story being packed in. It's difficult to take time to care about these individual moments. Like when Obi-Wan says goodbye to Padme, and like, I know Anakin's the father. Like, Anakin's the father, isn't he? Like that should have had more gravitas to it, and instead he just turns and says, "I'm sorry," and then it cuts to the next scene. Once it, like, we don't get the breathing moment of Padme's like dismay of like, it's all out there, everything. So
yeah, I mean,
there's a lot to it.
So like the things I would throw in response to that are there was a trivia thing I saw that was basically like, oh, like there was a 4-hour cut of this movie at some point in the editing process.
Yeah, I know.
Release the Lucas cut.
And then point B is like,
I'd watch shit.
We know that dialogue is not Lucas's strength, so I don't necessarily know that I would want another hour and a half of him working dialogue into this. So that would be my big caveats there. And there were definitely times as I was like watching this movie where I was writing what I think is more interesting dialogue in my head, and I was like saying it out, like when Padme asks like, "You're going to kill him, aren't you?" Like Anakin saying like, I hope with everything it doesn't come to that, is like the line I would have like pitched in the room or something like that.
Yeah.
and we don't get a lot of those moments. There is
No,
there
we
is
don't
like
get-
a lot of lacking in those interchanges, but there's still I mean, it's certainly still
But I-
way
and I-
better than the
yeah.
other things. And honestly, again, like I'm also way more happy to have the movie like moving at a pace as opposed to a 10-minute, scene talking about the trade tariffs and stuff like that. Like the fact that
You
like
do. I don't.
I know because you're a fucking moron, Cameron. Like I
Hey,
can't.
hey, 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 hey! I'm not a moron. All right.
I mean,
A moron wouldn't be interested in those sorts of
Trade
things.
tariffs.
Okay.
I mean, like
I think
you are
Fictional trade.
They might
fictional
be
trade
unrelated,
tariffs.
but yeah.
Fictional trade tariffs are not something an idiot would be interested in. Thank you very much.
I mean, I don't know.
A weirdo and a crazy person, sure, but a moron, I am not.
All of the above, I would say. So
You might think it's moronic to care about such a thing.
one of the things that especially as I was going through, like much like the Sifo-Dyas thing that I had to do, like the extra lore and stuff, like it's obviously very heavily like inferred that Darth Plagueis the Wise is Palpatine's master, and that ultimately becomes canon. But it's like I remember the first few times I watched this movie, like thinking, wait, was he Darth Plagueis the Wise? And it's just like a moniker he's coming up with. Like what? Like I remember thinking that and thinking like, wait, did Palpatine just admit that he created Anakin Skywalker out of the midichlorians and the Force? Which, yay, midichlorians coming back up. And
Well,
that whole, like,
I think
full circle
yeah.
thing. And
I
like
felt like it. Yeah.
even here I had
ahead.
to like do a quick kind of deep dive into like Wikipedia to see like what the actual Plagueis story was, and it's like, oh, it was like it was a failed attempt or whatever. He didn't realize that he had actually succeeded in creating a child of the Force in Anakin, and it's not until Palpatine meets Anakin years later that he realizes everything has come full circle or whatever. And at that point he'd already killed Plagueis, so it didn't matter. But like
I felt
it's
the
things like that
inference
that I'm just like,
was-
oh, like it there's an element of like, okay, it's cool to leave certain things open for like the extended canon to explore, but then there are other things where it's like, no, you probably really should have like laid out what actually happened here. If you're going to have given us Space Jesus as Anakin Skywalker and then kind of explain it, like it like the explanation ends up being like a very half measure that I think should have been like fully like
Well,
spoken of, I guess.
my interpretation of that scene has always been that when he talks about the apprentice, like Palpatine starts getting real coy
Mhm.
about the apprentice, and he taught his apprentice everything he knew.
Yeah.
And then he that entire thing for me on that end of things was I immediately picked up the first time I watched this film. Oh, he's referencing his master. He's the apprentice, and he's like, that apprentice was like such a badass,
Right.
Snuck in the middle of the night and just like murked his
Big
master.
Dick
'cause he
Apprentice
could do
over
it.
here, yeah.
Yeah, Big Dick Apprentice over here.
The
Super
problem I
good-looking
have, though,
guy.
is
I picked
that
up on that way more.
he specifically and probably what I hung on to more so is that he says it's a Sith legend, probably not something the Jedi would tell you, which leads me to think, oh, this is a story from like way in the past. And that it's carried like not, hey, this is something that happened 15 years ago. When or I guess 20 years ago or whatever, when you were just a baby, or before you were just a baby, really. So yeah, like that's the
obfuscating.
this is again where and this is something like Logan and I touched on in our pre-show conversation earlier in the week, is like Star Wars is like really bad with like establishing the actual chronology of timelines and how long the universe's memory is around certain things here. Like, again, 19 years from now, people are going to think that the Jedi were just mumbo jumbo and
They were a myth,
hoopla
yeah.
and hocus pocus and whatnot. And then, another 30 years after that, same kind of thing. Like, oh, the rebellion didn't really exist because we've got the First Order here, or whatever. It's like those
that one I don't get. That one I
those
really don't
ideas.
get.
It's just like so this being another one of those of like, it's a legend that happened 15 years ago is like that's a like, so that's why I in like early thinking was, I thought, and also this is in an era around or after the time. It was after the time of Knights of the Old Republic and stuff. So I'm thinking Darth Plagueis is like, you know, a Sith Lord in the era of Sith Lords or something like that. A millennia ago, and this was a power he unearthed, and Sidious is now telling us that he actually figured out this same power and like used it to create Anakin. That's what, before the expanded canon starts to like flesh that out, that was my takeaway of that story in this movie. Was not like Palpatine being coy and being like, yeah, I killed this guy, ha ha ha, or whatever. So that's I just wanted to like chime
I
in
also
on,
find
on
it
something
interesting, if we're gonna do a Darth Plagueis spoiler cast now. I find it interesting because like it seems like you picked up more on the like Darth Plagueis Palpatine like Anakin connection, where like I've always been much more interested in like just like him explaining sort of that back, so just like Darth Plagueis and like him like he even discovered a way to like stop life kind of thing, right? Or like not stop, like extend life kind of thing, right? Like I've always focused more on that and less like, oh, here's like a weird thing for Anakin, right? Because like to me, I like what they do with like it, like the reference to Anakin, because it's like super vague, and I've never been like, okay, sure, that's about Anakin. I can always just be like, that's a whatever thing he made. Maybe he created life, sure. Because if they made it more explicit, then they have to confront however Anakin came into existence again, and no matter how they explain that, it's stupid and dumb, right? Like that's like I would rather them do this and just be like, oh, and he even figured out a way to like create life, maybe, right? And like not go into any more details, because otherwise it'd have been like, now you're ruining the really cool setup to this whole speech, because like I don't need that shit in my life, right? Like it's all there's no good solution, it's all dumb. So it's just, just kind of touch on it and then just keep going.
I mean,
I think that's like the whole, because it's there for a reason that they're bringing up that he learned how to create life from the midichlorians. If it had just been like, if you take that sentence out and it is just like he figured out a way to cheat death, yes, that's a way more interesting thing and doesn't get into the whole Anakin as space Jesus thing. But that's not what we get. We do get like deliberate call outs to he created life from the midichlorians and stuff. And maybe you just block that out and or tune that part out, because midichlorians are dumb and have always been dumb and will always be dumb. But it is there, and Lucas put it in there. So that's why like that's why it jumped out to me as like, and again, it jumped out to me way more this time around watching it than it has in the past. And it might even be just because like we've been talking about and pointing out how stupid it is that like Anakin is space Jesus. So like this revelation that Darth Plagueis like created that and is the reason for that. Again, like I thought for the longest time Darth Plagueis was a long time ago kind of thing. So I carried that forward and thought like, oh, so Palpatine. So like it's almost the like very
Palpatine
convoluted version of Palpatine saying, I am your father, like a la Darth Vader saying it, of course, to Luke, but we don't actually get that. And even that, I think, would have been a way more interesting tie-in, instead of it just being this random character that we never actually met or saw off screen. Like, it
but that's a problem with the prequels, man. I mean, that's just the problem with the prequels.
I will say that from a storytelling perspective, that would have been more interesting based on the pieces that they set up, but it's also a very cheap and crappy thing, as we will also get, years later in episode 9 eventually. So the like it's if this saga had not already had like that really powerful I am your father kind of moment, this would have been an interesting approach to it, but yeah, I guess not. Anyway. So let's dive into other favorite moments of or scenes from this iteration. Frank, any ones you want to pull out and highlight?
Yeah. So I mean, I think we kind of already touched on it, but I think one of my favorite parts of the whole movie is like that opening space battle. Like I said, the ship designs, and it's also just, it's fun, it's fast, it's filmed really well. I also really like the Jedi starfighters that they get. Like I like that they have those like red and yellow like themed starfighters. You also get a lot of really good interactions and back and forth between them, and I feel like, I know we only get this so much, but like we could have had so much more fun of like Anakin and him being on these like buddy cop adventures that they sometimes talk about, like, you know, like in the reference. And we kind of get some of that here, but like I think that could have been something we could have got more of and would have been more fun.
Mm-hmm.
But like I do really like that between them. Just like on like those weird like headset comm units.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Especially at this point where like we never knew the Clone Wars was going to be a thing, or you know, we never knew we were going to get like a deeper dive in that era. Like it does feel like it makes you want episode 2 to have like started the Clone Wars, and then the whole rest of that movie just have been like, you know, their adventures and stuff like that, and make it a Lethal Weapon but in Star Wars. And instead we get like we get like, you know, more interesting movies told off screen in these little anecdotes of you know, the thing that happened. Like that's 9 times I've said you. He's like, no, that other one doesn't count. And even that, like I remember that line in particular. Like that is like Ewan McGregor makes that line so much better than I'm sure it was ever written on the page by adding that extra like doesn't count. Like I'm sure it was not written doesn't count. He like that was a just brilliant choice in performance to take those like the sometimes less realistic lines and really add some flesh to it. But yeah, you know, great chat on that opening scene. Anything else from it in particular you want to like highlight or celebrate?
Not from the opening scene, I don't think, but the other another scene, kind of battle scene I always want to give a shout out to is Kashyyyk. Like that I think is a super cool planet. I think it's a super cool battle there, like, and I know we kind of go back there a couple times, but like I think all that's super cool. I think it's kind of a fun throwback because as I had heard a long time ago when I was watching these, like the Ewoks, they originally wanted to be Wookiees, but then they changed to Ewoks to be like more kid friendly and sell more toys. So I think this is kind of a cool throwback of like now we're getting like the Wookiee battle on like their kind of like jungle planet. But I like that it's less of like jungle and it's more that like tropical island. Like it's like this like D-Day, like Saving Private Ryan, like beach storming scenes.
Yeah.
Like, I think all that's super cool. And as Logan shouted out with Camino last week, Kashyyyk was my favorite Star Wars Battlefront map.
There you go.
When it felt like such a huge map where you just had to like wander around and find people. Like it was just
awesome sniper map. If you sniped in that, if you were a sniper trooper, you could just like stay up where the spawn was and just have your scope of the battlefield. It was an awesome level.
Yeah, I like watching it.
Also,
this
as a
time
heads
around,
up, Frank. Oh, I was just gonna say, Frank. He didn't choose it to make it more kid friendly. It's because Chewie has used a bowcaster, which is a technological weapon, and since Wookiees use technology, he wanted it to be much more guerrilla, like naturalist warfare.
That makes
sense.
So
as a heads up of that.
I'd never heard that. That makes sense though.
One of the things that really stood out to me about the Kashyyyk stuff this time around is like we see a whole bunch of like tech and weapons and ships and stuff that like I don't remember seeing anywhere else. Like even like going into the Clone Wars and stuff, they never like pull back a lot of these items, or if they do, like it's so sparse. So like there was a whole bunch of this. I was like, oh, like this is all stuff that I feel like I've never seen before, even though I've watched this movie, you know, many a time, I'm sure. But like it's still, because we don't see that tech and a lot of those things elsewhere in any of the stuff, obviously, as we go into, you know, the dark years, I think, as is even the like official galactic timeline for the next 19 years. Like we don't see a lot of like the transition from those ships into the new gen. So kind of tying what you highlighted there and what Cam mentioned earlier, there was a lot of like, there were moments in this where I was like, I want, and obviously we're getting it to some kind of degree, maybe with Bad Batch, depending on how long of a series that ends up being. But like, I want a show like that to explore what these, you know, early years of the Empire looked like and felt like for you know, people. Like I was like, I thought as we watched this, I was like, oh, it would have been a really cool scene, or a really cool like story beat if there were like a Clone Wars episode or, you know, a Bad Batch episode eventually that was like Padme's funeral on Naboo or something like that, forgetting that we get, a scene of that procession in this, but like having, before, like Obi-Wan obviously had to be in hiding, so he couldn't be there, but like this whole like episode kind of played out in my head of like what that would be like, and trying to celebrate that character who theoretically should be a much more big deal, getting to see that like a button on her arc, I guess, especially when it ends as badly as it does in this movie. Anyway, any other moments, Frank?
I was trying to think. One of the only other one that I think I would kind of call out, and I know it's like not necessarily one of my favorite scenes, but I do like the confrontation with Palpatine, like at the end, or but I guess I had the one with Mace, like I like the idea of it,
Rest
like when
in
he tells
peace.
him, and it's like,
Rest in peace, Kit Fitzo.
yeah, dude, we lose.
He goes out
'Cause
like
that's
goes out like a little bitch.
And
Did him
that's
dirty,
one thing.
alright?
Dude,
So-
they don't do him dirty. Dude, they make Palpatine such a badass, though.
Yeah.
Like, dude, when he's fighting Yoda lightsaber wise and like taking on Yoda, like, get out of here with that. Like, Palpatine is totally showing off how good he is. He's doing great, and he takes on like these Jedi Masters who, like, I love this entire scene. I'm with you, Frank. It's awesome. Kit Fisto doesn't go out like Kit Fisto lasts longer than the other two council members.
He lasts about 3 seconds longer than the other two that get taken out right out the gate.
This is a man who took over a galactic republic. All right, like, dude's on another level. All right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, his other level also means he comes back in another 3 films.
But that's why, like,
I don't
as
even
I
know what
like
you're talking
that Palpatine. I like that, like, Palpatine's been playing these both sides, and I like that, like, Anakin tells Mace, and so then Mace is like, all right, we got to get the crew together, and they get, presumably, you think, like, the strongest of the Jedi available to go there, and so that's why you got to get Kit Fisto, but that's why, like, yeah, like, I wish that fight was, like, longer, or we got to see, because I kind of agree where I feel like all the Jedi kind of go out, like, way too fast, and I wouldn't have even minded if they brought more Jedi. And even if it was just Palpatine versus a ton of people, it's like, do some cool Jedi stuff, like, but then they kind of get taken out pretty quickly. And then Mace obviously gets taken out at the end, which is unfortunate, but it's still like, I think like a cool moment. And I just like that idea of like, there's like that kind of that moment where they're like walking in where it's like, they're just determined. Like there's just 5 Jedi walking in and they're not here to talk. Like, they're here to just get this done. But, so that's kind of a cool moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would disagree. Like they're there to take him in.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were expecting a fight, they'd go in with like lightsabers drawn, and they don't, and that's why Palpatine's able to take out 2 of them immediately, and then Kit shortly after. But yeah, they still didn't like. I mean, it is their hubris and their arrogance, as kind of has already been touched on, that like they didn't trust Anakin. Wasn't leading them into a trap or something like that. Or maybe they didn't, like, they should have thought he was, I don't know. They definitely went in unprepared for what actually ends up happening, obviously.
Yeah.
But also from the knowing what's going to come, they couldn't do too much because they needed to set up Palpatine as like a foil for Yoda, who we all has already long been established as like the most powerful of the Jedi. So you have to, like if you already kind of set up like Sidious as taking out 4 other members of the Jedi Council in too quick a fashion, and then a ton of other Jedi on top of that or whatever, then it's like, well, then of course, like Yoda wasn't going to be, unless you're saying Yoda was just that much more powerful than Mace and everybody else, which I don't think they wanted to really dive into. But anyway, any other? Yeah, go ahead, Logan.
I was just gonna add on because like this is a scene that like I feel like we're all gonna have thoughts on. I mean, like, I think the Mace Windu Kit Fisto Jedi Council confrontation with Palpatine is like, I actually think it's cool. I like the scene. I think it's done mostly well. I think the problem is something that Cameron alluded to, which is the fact that like this movie, for obvious and not so obvious reasons, does this thing where like it, and like Star Wars as a whole, like over time, and not just like the movies, but like all of its properties, began to do this thing where they just started to like jerk off Palpatine and like just make him be so cool.
That's not
like,
what I said at all.
and like Palpatine fucking
Direct
sucks.
quote.
Like he's like he's not like the problem with Palpatine is that like he isn't this interesting, right? Like and like in particular, like yeah, like the part of the duel with the Jedi Council that I don't like is the fact that it is just like him just like, wiping them out so quickly, right? And like the fact that like, oh, they have to make him so powerful, but like he gets his ass kicked by Mace Windu, right? Like Mace Windu wins the duel against Palpatine. Palpatine then just like fucking like right like throws sand in the eyes essentially to like win. Right, but like he's not
Such
that
is the
good,
Sith
which
way.
makes it even more frustrating when we get to the competition later on with Yoda, which we'll get to in a little bit, I'm sure. But like it makes that whole competition even more frustrating, right? But like that whole scene. I think Palpatine is most interesting when he's just a human, right? And when he's just a really smart person who's just evil, right? And is just doing bad shit. But when they try to make him like, I'm a fucking demigod, it's like, all right, I find you the least appealing right now. Like, he's like, to me, it's almost sort of like it's a little bit like the Clark Kent Superman dynamic, right? Where like, I find that character most interesting when he's Clark Kent and not Superman. And I find Palpatine most interesting when he's just like a really conniving, smart, like 8 steps ahead chess player like Lex Luthor than when he's trying to be like Doomsday out here and just wiping out the entire Jedi Council in like 2.5 seconds. That's me personally. And so like that's parts I don't like about that confrontation.
Yeah, well, real quick before you hop in, Cam, I was gonna say I don't know if I agree with your read that Mace won the duel. I think Palpatine was playing it because he needs to like turn Anakin still. So that's my that has been my read on that scene, is that like he like if it came down to it, he still could have like finished off Mace on his own without
I disagree.
Anakin coming in.
Because like the way it has when like Anakin's coming in there is basically like as Windu, and like they don't know Anakin's is like as Windu's like knocking down Palpatine basically, and then Anakin's like, don't do it because I just got here, and like this seems kind of sus on your end. And it's like I read it as like Mace would have won basically if he had just been like stab.
Cam, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, so I did not say Palpatine. Like, the problem with the scene is it's the structural problem with this film is it's too compact.
Yeah,
We have five Jedi Masters who, wait, is it 5 or 4?
It's 4.
Four Jedi Masters who, and like, why didn't they have more? Well, as we already saw at the council meeting, a bunch of them were already scattered across the galaxy, taking care of the sieges and whatnot. And we already have had multiple lines. The Jedi are stretched way too thin before the Clone Wars starts. So you have that going on. I will say that the reason why that scene happens so quickly and why it's not satisfying when these Jedi Masters just bite it right away, it's not to make... I don't think it makes necessarily Palpatine look like super badass or powerful so much as it's a very distinct problem with this film not having enough room for this epic. And here's the thing, I think it would have been awesome to see a very much a, like, the Chancellor's apartment, like, is spacious and cool. Like, you could have done a lot of cool set piece stuff with that.
Like a Phantom
with these 4 Jedi Masters, and like
duel,
showing the machinations of Palpatine aren't just in this political field and as like this puppet master of the war, but on a more intimate tactical basis as well. I think that you could have done that. I will say I think that it was very like, and it should be noted in both in the films and outside of it, they make reference to like Mace Windu being this like incredible warrior, on level with Yoda. In a lot of ways, especially in lightsaber combat. He is like, and when we get into the expanded universe that is still technically canon, it's been brought in from Legends. It's even more so. Like, there's this whole thing. I don't have time, and we aren't going to get into it. But what I will say is that, like, the moment Mace loses is when he, and I said it earlier, and you guys kind of like, poo-pooed it at the time, but I'll reiterate it. It's when he goes from saying, we're going to arrest you to, I'm going to kill you. And the entire time up to that point, it has been about, we are arresting you. It is procedure. We're doing this to protect the Republic. And all of a sudden you see a very scared Mace Windu who just watched Palpatine
Totally disagree
murk
with you, Reed. Yeah.
3. You can disagree with it, that's fine, but this is
Yeah.
what I like. This is what I definitely pick up out of this as, like, Mace Windu's flaws are, one, he, like, does he have reason not to trust Anakin? Yeah, but he has also not trusted Anakin from the moment he meets him as a child. He
Which, to be
blows
fair,
off
was
the
a
idea of
good
the
call.
prophecy.
He knew he was an agent of Palpatine
Would
from the beginning.
Or would have Mace Windu, being such a respected Jedi Master, being an additional mentor to Anakin, kept him away from the dark side? I don't know,
think
man. You're
Anakin
talking about,
Skywalker
like,
was bereft of
hypotheticals.
mentors, though. Like, I don't think that was his issue, having not enough mentors in his life.
But if you had Samuel L. Jackson as a mentor, your life would have been a lot better.
Not this Samuel L. Jackson. Like, this one's
Anyway.
pretty weak.
No, I will, like, I'll just kind of end it about this scene here, is that I think that what really strikes this scene as being great, and why I think it's so, like, it's memed, it's iconic, is that we get to see that, like, Trevor, you said it yourself, it sets up that Palpatine is, like, and here's the thing, your problem with it being, like, Palpatine's this super badass guy, they're jerking him off, is the same argument on why Yoda flipping around doing lightsaber tricks is a problem. These are masters of the Force. These are masters, like, these people who have this degree of capability in the Force. Why would they be using lightsabers to jump around and do stuff when they have enough Force power to be far more powerful than just somebody swinging around a lightsaber? Like that argument from Episode 2 gets carried over here as well. Like, we have to see Palpatine do this because they made Yoda do it in the previous episode. It's the follow through on that, because these ancient, like, wise, sage-like characters in their own, good and evil versions of them, being respected in the original trilogy of not being, like, deeply in contact, and when they do use the Force, it's in an incredible force of power, whether it's lifting an X-Wing from a murky, like, muddy swamp, or shooting lightning out of your hands that's slowly murdering the hero. The Emperor actually was never in danger because he's such a powerful sorcerer type figure that he was always in control of that situation, is the impact you get in Return of the Jedi. Once again, we see because we want to see Yoda and, like, because people want to see Yoda and Darth Sidious do cool, flippy lightsaber tricks, this is what we get. And this sets up Palpatine as being somebody who can do flippy lightsaber tricks with CGI Yoda.
Yeah. So what happens in 30 years that makes him not want to do it anymore is the problem. And like,
he's got a bad back now.
I never wanted to.
It's the same problem with Yoda.
I never wanted to see, exactly, like, for both of them. Yeah. I never wanted to see them doing cool flippy shit. Like, defies.
I don't think most people did.
That is, George was like, hey, we can do this stuff with CGI now. Let's really, make the ILM people, like, earn their paycheck. And it was like, and again, nobody was saying no to him. So
Nobody's
suddenly,
saying no,
it's canon that these guys are doing all these crazy moves compared to 30 years from now, 20 years from now, when they're slow old men just kind of hobbling around with sticks.
To your point, though, Logan, people did like it. People,
I don't think
when Episode 2 came out and Yoda was flipping around, that was a massive selling point, and that is still why some people say...
I do not agree with that. Even at the time, I don't think that's true.
This
We're
is
getting anecdotal at this
is
point.
the schism of like original. It's the How I Met Your Mother thing of, like, original trilogy people versus, like, prequel trilogy people kind of thing of, like, original trilogy people largely were like, what the hell's going on? Like, I remember that being the conversation. Like, this isn't Yoda. Like, what the hell is this? Whereas, like, kids were like, oh my god, that's so cool, yay! And so, like, you get the Ewok effect that Barney Stinson kind of talks about of, like, how old were you when you saw this is going to, like, impact your own thoughts on it, probably.
But I knew people who, and here's the thing, non-big Star Wars fans who are seeing it because, it's the new Star Wars movie. A lot of them liked Yoda doing flippy stuff.
That's so anecdotal.
And I know that because I went to school with those people.
Like,
I was of age with those people who were thinking that. So I personally, and this is anecdotally, of course, encountered that as a thing. And I did not know that other people shared my feelings about Yoda, like, doing the flippy stuff and not being just using the Force, until I was an adult. And I talked to people who because my age contemporaries, and some people a little bit older than me, who some of them are big Star Wars fans, still love the idea of Yoda doing flippy stuff. Like, it's a weird dichotomy that either you think that it's cool, and because it's cool, it's awesome, and that's why it should be why people should be fine with it, or you think it's a structural flaw in that it sets up a structural flaw in the original trilogy by creating these moments. And it's a structural issue that I think is very detrimental, in my opinion, as a very big original trilogy fan, to the prequels as a whole, and definitely carry over into 2 and 3, and are just like massive hits, in my opinion, because of it. So
I don't think it is a structural problem for Yoda to be a badass in the prequels compared to where you see him in the original trilogy, right? Like, I still, again, we talked about it a couple episodes ago, like, I still think that Yoda lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp is, for the entire saga of Star Wars, the single coolest Force move in the series. Because, like, the power behind that, you just get the sense of, like, holy shit, this guy can do anything, right? It is, like, the first time you really see someone use the Force in an incredible way, and, like, even all the shit we'll see afterwards is still, like, not, like, when it's somebody, like, lifting a fucking thing out of a swamp, right? Like, it's just, like, such a cool moment. You get a sense of, like, it's shot really well. You get a sense of how powerful he is. My issue is not that. My issue is that, like, the fight with Dooku is just badly done, right? Like, it's just not a good fight. Like, Chris leaves 105 in it, right? Like, he just can't do anything, so he has to be CGI'd as well. And then Yoda doing flips is, like, it's that thing, like, I'm not necessarily opposed to it in theory, I suppose. It's just, like, not well executed. And then, like, they just didn't execute it again well here, right? Like, it's just not well executed. And then again, whenever we'll get to the conversation around the final, like, the 2 final fights, I think there's such a case study of, like, one being done really well and one being done really not well, because one felt true to the characters while the other one didn't feel true to the 2 characters and like who they were, I think, right? And, like, that's largely my issue on that fault line as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can probably just pivot into that conversation, because I think
we were just talking about what things Frank likes, and we got this.
I know, but, like, we've also got a heart out, so I'm trying to just kind of, like,
that's fair.
hit things as they come up naturally in talking points. And so on that, like, the dueling and duels, effectively, like, we have a very, like, a brotherly or a mentor apprentice relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, which, even if it hasn't been, expertly portrayed on screen in the 2 movies that we get that relationship, like, you can still fill in the blanks for a lot of that. And to its credit, I think there are a lot of good moments that this movie helps set up to really like make that a final, like, an impactful final sequence. Compared to, like, the, just the biggest, the most powerful good guy versus the most powerful bad guy, like, both of which we as an audience don't have, like, a deep personal connection to. Even if you're, like, the biggest Yoda fan, like, Yoda is always still a side character in these stories. Palpatine is the big bad villain in these stories. Like, we're not identifying with these, so having to constantly, like, flip back and forth between, like, a scene that we're, like, invested in the outcome, even though, again, we know where the outcome's going, and flippy CGI things throwing Senate things at each other is like, stop going back to this. We don't need this. We don't care about this. Give us the fight on Mustafar. Cam, any thoughts you want to chime in on this sequence?
Yeah, the sequence, I think the like, despite the problem of the fight that is Palpatine versus Yoda, I like that the sequence of that fight feels better than the sequence of the fight with Dooku and Yoda, where it was like extraordinary force abilities first, and then lightsaber. We'll have to say this with lightsabers. Instead, it starts off with the lightsabers and moves into a moment, into these, like, very big moments of forced capability. That being said, like, I don't like the fight. Like, the fact that the fight happens to begin with is frustrating, because it's essentially Yoda on an assassination mission, which just feels really weird to, like, even just say that phrase out loud. Like, Yoda went to assassinate Emperor Palpatine. And I feel like the work that Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen put into building a good dichotomy with each other, that even when they were saying the most garbo lines imaginable, that is like so like wannabe Shakespearean at certain points, as this dialogue between the two of them, it feels good despite it not being good. Like the bond that Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor have as friends, the chemistry that they have as individuals with each other, that didn't really feel like it existed in the previous film, but definitely feels like it exists now, is so well executed. And when that final scene of, like I have that, like, even if stupid as it is, I have the high ground. It's so stupid, but it's him saying, "Don't just like stop, just stop, Anakin, just stop doing what you're doing, just stop for a minute." And Anakin says no, and he does it, and it's the weird like loopity loop loop. And now you're missing. I didn't cut off your metal arm, just your organic ones, because haha. But the the moment after that happens, and the fire catches on Vader, and he's like being burned alive, and Obi-Wan is just like in horror watching this like monster that took the place of his friend and his brother, and it feels real and visceral and wonderful, as far as like, this is a really great moment on film. And it's, even though like in a lot of technicality, like in a lot of technicalities, it isn't. It, between those two actors and what they're doing, it feels great. When he just goes like, "You're my brother, like I loved you," like, this is not, I'm not even talking about you as the chosen one, I'm not even talking about you as a Jedi, just like you as a person, who you are to me, and like what the choices you've chosen to do have led us to this point, and like I just can't handle it, and I'm not going to stand here and just watch you die. I'm going to leave. Picks up his lightsaber, takes off.
That scene this time around, I just thought of the meme of like, yes, your father wanted you to have this when you were older, when you were old enough. And then like the cutting back to this of like, by the way, give that to my son.
Yeah. Doesn't happen. It's like, yeah, let me lie to you real quick. Your dad wanted you to have this when you got older.
Yeah.
He told me while he was burning alive on Mustafar.
Yeah. I agree. Especially the "you were my brother, like I loved you," like that is, especially given how the Jedi have been set up, of course, in this, and as very monastic, like don't have attachments, like the fact that he of course was attached, as a lot of these Jedis will be over the course of the saga, because it's pretty boring if you actually don't connect to anything else or don't fight for anything. Like the fact that like Obi-Wan betrays the Order with his love of Anakin. Like it also, he'd probably also, if he hadn't been blinded by it, he would have seen the issues and stuff sooner. But such is the curse of hindsight, I suppose. But yeah, but it also it is dumb, and I will continue to rail on how stupid it is that like, I have the high ground, so you can't win, you can't do this. Oh, tell that to Darth Maul, because he had the high ground and you sliced him in half, dude. When you at half your age or whatever.
It was a smaller high ground though. It was like a slightly upper ground, not really a high ground. Though.
Yeah,
it was like slightly upper, not like far away and up.
It was an elevated landscape.
Yeah, it was an elevated. It was just a slightly elevated landscape. It wasn't a high ground.
I also just don't understand anyone how. There's another one, of course, that has been memed to death, but I will never fathom how George Lucas wrote the line, "Only Sith deal in absolutes," not realizing the conundrum of that stupid sentence. But that's also...
It's okay. Dave Filoni has explained it plenty of times away. It's fine now.
What's Dave Filoni's explanation for it?
I just made that up. I don't know if he has. No. He probably has at some convention.
He definitely has. He's talked about how it's a sign of the Jedi themselves haven't gotten so proud, arrogant, big of themselves, that they're they can't realize the fact that them saying this statement for a millennium is in and of itself its own contradiction, right? They don't even recognize the fact that them saying only Sith deal in absolutes is of course an absolute. So they've lost just like the entire meaning of what that sentence even means anymore, because of the fact that like it's obviously from the only the ideal absolutes is an absolute itself. And like their entire kind of philosophy was like a contradiction by the end. I mean, I'll say that if you're done, Trevor, like I'll say
I was gonna throw it to you anyway, because you were the one that kind of brought us to this this conversation point anyway.
I love the Anakin Obi-Wan stuff, right? Like I actually think and first off, I've long said like I don't think the writing of Star Wars is, especially this movie, which I think is the best written of the prequel trilogy. I don't think it's that bad. I think it gets a bad rap because you kind of need to give something a bad rap in the prequel trilogy. And it's a pretty fair target a lot of times, but like I don't think it's as bad as people talk about it. And especially here, right? Like I think Ewan and Hayden Christensen, like Cameron talked about, their chemistry is so much improved from the first film that they're in together. Partially because like they've had 3 years to just actually know each other as human beings outside of filming it, and that I think that helps, and I think that carries over into how their characters kind of react to each other as well. I think the entire final fight with him is really well done. I think, again, it goes into this being the most like operatic of the prequel films. It is an outlandishly operatic sequence, and it works really well, right? Because it embraced the fact that this is like totally ridiculous in all of the best way possible. I love the like cinematography and like background, like the explosions and fire, like they're in like Dante's Inferno basically as this fight happens, and it's really visually, I think, interesting to watch. And then to jump over to the Yoda and Palpatine stuff, I think just consistently doesn't land, right? Like the Yoda Palpatine fight is actually my least favorite sequence in the entire prequel trilogy. It's my least favorite sequence out of the first 6 films. We'll get to stuff later on that I will like less, but out of the first 6 films, I think it is my least favorite sequence because it doesn't work. And not on like a technical, like they just didn't execute it well level, like on the Yoda Dooku fight or parts of the Palpatine Jedi Council parts, because I think parts do work. It just fundamentally like doesn't work. Like as a thing, it's incredibly flawed. And Trevor kind of alluded to this, but the fact that like by the very idea of Yoda going to fight Palpatine, it already is destined to not work because we know that he can't kill Palpatine, and we know that Palpatine can't kill him, and we know that neither one of them can be damaged by it because Palpatine's already had like the facial scars to it. So like nothing can happen in this fight. Like nothing will come of it. And so then you've started this fight now. How do you end it where nothing can happen, no one can be hurt, and it has to end with one of them being left as a dictator basically, and one of them just being sent across the galaxy and just leaving the fight? So how do you have Yoda leave this fight? Like how do you make that make sense? And the problem is they can't, because there was no way to make that make sense, and so it doesn't make sense, and the ending we get is ridiculous. It is absolutely insane. It's like, oh, I got knocked down, better just fuck off, guys. Republic had a good run, I'm just gonna dip out. Yeah, it's like and so
while
like,
my opponent is hanging by a bar above me.
Exactly. He's right fucking there. It's like, what do you, like, you can jump really far, Yoda. I've seen you do it, right? It's like
you don't even have to jump, pull him down. You have him right there. Take him down. Yeah. It's
an excellent point. Even better point. Yeah.
It's such a bad scene. It's such a bad scene.
The problem with just that part of Revenge of the Sith is that it is the opposite of Rogue One. Whereas Rogue One makes what came next better. This leaves you with the thing of like, all right, that was really weird, Yoda. Like, it makes like the Yoda in the future be like, why didn't, like, you could have been the Hope. You could have been the New Hope right there in that moment. You could have done it. Like, it's like, it makes it.
We would have called it Star Wars The Old Hope.
Yeah, it's like, all right, like, you had it there, right? And like, that's the problem, is that like, the entire fight couldn't be a fair fight from the jump because it had to tie certainly Yoda's hand behind his back because he can't kill the guy he's fighting, and Palpatine can't either. But like, I think in a fair fight, Yoda beats the shit out of Palpatine, so it doesn't matter. So it's like this weird thing of like, but like they can't even have that. Like that's the problem. Like it's a fight. You make a fight where nothing can happen and no one can get hurt. So then it's this thing of like, what are we doing for like the 10 minutes these guys are fighting, right? Like the best part of that duel is Yoda walking in and just like force knocking out the guards, and then after that, everything is terrible. Like it just none of it works. And like even like the imagery that George is going for of like it being housed in the Senate chambers to be like it's the destruction of the Senate, but like that was already done better by when Palpatine gets the powers earlier in the movie. Like that's a better moment of that than here's a smash in the Senate in case you didn't get the imagery I was going for. Like it's like no, like I got it. Like I might only be like 12, but like I can comprehend what you're doing here. Like I don't need you to actually smash the place in front of me. Like it just doesn't work in any level.
Padme's comment is the seal of death that we will eventually see when after the completion of the Death Star, he just like abolishes the Senate entirely.
I mean, he does that.
I mean, it is
like he does that here. Like it is already. Oh yeah, no, I guess you're right. It does. It is.
No, they even make comment.
Senate,
he has to keep the Imperial Senate because at this point the galaxy is too fractured from the war to actually be under like singular control like that.
Yeah.
But
yes, so this is how Liberty dies with thunderous applause. I just
great line.
As
my
you
favorite line in the
great
entire
delivery.
movie. Yeah.
Love Natalie Portman.
As
She's a gem.
As you were kind of talking about that, Logan, knowing what comes in the next trilogy, how bonkers would it have been if like Yoda did just kill Palpatine in this, and then like we walk out of that movie and we're like, wait, but like how does he what happened? Like
the clones,
and then you had just
clones!
left that like if that had been like how the movie ended of like and it was like as we all go in expecting that of course neither of these guys is going to lose because we know where
That'd
they
have
end,
been
but,
cool.
like,
That'd have been actually
what if it had ended with like one of them dying and us just being like, wait, but how does that like now we need to fill in these blanks, and it would have made for like canon extended canon lore and stuff, which had already been kind of like explored in a lot of the canon of like clone Palpatines and stuff elsewhere. But yeah, like obviously we didn't get that, so just an interesting what if.
I did want to give a shout out just to like my what is maybe my favorite sequence of the movie, which we just kind of touched on there, which is the entire final like sequence in the Senate of them all giving like the emergency powers to Palpatine after like his speech. I mean, like the entire Imperial like template for what the Empire is and who Palpatine is obviously directly and explicitly drawn from the Nazis and their rise to power. And I think it's handled okay at times in the prequel trilogy, but I think Revenge of the Sith really does nail, I think, and parts of Attack of the Clones, I will acknowledge, the kind of manipulative nature of like slowly giving more power to someone over time, right? Like that, like republics don't fall overnight; they fall over years as just kind of things slowly degrade, right? And you just take more and more power over time, right? And like George Lucas, for his many faults, is not stupid, and he understood this, and it is, I think, one of the strongest through lines of the prequels. And so to see the kind of culmination of this, right? That like he doesn't take power by being like, I'm the bad guy, reveal, everyone works for me now. It's like, no, they give him the power. Like the good guy, quote unquote, the good guys, the Republic just gives him the keys to the car in a really great sequence. And I think the music is done really well there. I think the lighting is done really well there. And yeah, like Padme gets this awesome line that is like such a great line that is so true to history. Like throughout so much of history, how republics have fallen is not via, conquest more often than not. It's via like internal convulsions and them slipping into like tyranny and dictatorships, right? It is through thunderous applause. What a great line, right? Like, and so I think, which is so prescient still to this day, right? As we've seen stuff, whether in America or other countries, kind of grapple with like right-wing authoritarianism tendencies, like it is through like the electorate and through misinformation and manipulation, like you see Palpatine do so well, that these kind of things can manifest themselves. And so it's a great sequence that as a 12-year-old kid who, like Cameron, loved history and loved politics and knew these lessons even then, I sat like gobsmacked by like, holy shit, like that was done really well. And done in such a terrifying manner of like, it was done so easily. Like they didn't put up a fight.
It reminds me a little bit less of, and here's an interesting point, is that it reminds me a little bit less of Hitler's Rise, which was done through like there's a very distinct similarity to it, and I actually believe that's what George Lucas was going for.
Made that
was much more in line with that.
Given an interview,
but I found it actually to be much more similar to the establishment of the Roman Empire from the Roman Republic with the rise
Also a lot
of
of similarities
Octavian
there, yeah.
becoming Augustus, becoming Caesar, because the entire time they're talking about they're like the Chancellor's are getting too much power, but the counterpoint is, but we're in this war. He's the right leader for it. The Senate demanded that he stay in power.
Yeah, we're in a
like
crisis.
all these things, and a lot of those story beats follow the through line of Augustus's rise to the establishment of the Roman Empire.
So you're saying Palpatine should have said A2 Windu?
No, because that was Julius Caesar, and it was about Brutus, and
I'm aware.
It would have been, but here's an interesting note: is Augustus means, Augustus means the chosen, or the one that's chosen, and it was given to him by the Senate. The Senate, there's so many parallels that I don't maybe George was also drawing from the fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And he probably was. Like you said, he's a smart guy.
History repeats itself anyway.
I was gonna
in
a lot of ways.
Building on this topic. One of the trivia bits that I omitted is Chancellor Palpatine's strategy for maintaining power is known to political scientists and is called perpetual war. He comes to power through conflict with the Trade Federation, gains greater privileges through the Clone War, and solidifies his position through the war on the Jedi.
Which is very Third Reich.
Which we've seen
doing more things. Yeah,
we've seen with with Germany, as well as we've seen in more modern conflicts in the wars in the Middle East and stuff like that. The power struggles that we see there. Frank, we haven't heard from you in a little bit. Any thoughts? Because we didn't hear your thoughts on the closing duels before we dove into the political stuff there.
Yeah, so going back to that, I also don't like the Palpatine Yoda fight. I did like it more as a kid. I'll even be honest there. As a kid who just kind of did want to see some of the crazy fights and the flipping around, I was like, oh, this is cool, finally. The Yoda's being a badass. But watching it, even as I got a little bit older in those rewatches, and then even especially watching it now, I am definitely on more on your guys' side, where I'm like, I don't want this. And this isn't what I want from Yoda or anyone. So I definitely I don't love that scene. I think Logan's kind of right, where the coolest part of that scene is when Yoda first walks in and kind of force pushes and then knocks them, and then it is just downhill from there. And they could have kept. I think I agree with you guys. Where they could have kept that encounter, but then just done it better and done it differently. But I think there's a lot of stuff in the prequels we can definitely kind of say that about.
Yeah. It's also,
and then go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's a weird beat that especially because of how the Dooku fight in the last movie played out, where we've seen Yoda catch the lightning already. And so why does he get blown away by Sidious's? It's it's not that he wasn't expecting it or whatever. And if it's supposed to be that Sidious is just that much more powerful, that's not how it comes across. It just comes across as well, Yoda just went out like a weird little green bitch. What happened? We've seen him do this. What why not now? So yeah, I just wanted to say that. But back to you, Frank.
And then going to Mustafar, I do love that fight. I think it's a great fight. I also I do think there is some good emotions there. And same thing where there's parts of it that probably could have been, done enhanced or done better, or even just acted better or written better, however you want to, phrase it. But I still think what we got, I still think is really good. And I still think there is some powerful stuff there, especially as we talked about, when he's like, "Yo, you were my brother. I love you." I think there is some good moments there, and then him picking up the lightsaber to take it, I think is cool. That's one of those I think we've touched on it a lot, but it's this movie knew where it had to go, so this movie had to do the job of getting everything there. But I still think there is a couple things where they actually did it in a really cool way. And I think that's one of them is him taking the lightsaber. It's that's how he got the lightsaber, and he's just held onto it for forever. And I guess I never really thought about his intention would be to give it to Luke or whatever. He's just I just have this, and he's held on to it for years because it was his best friend's lightsaber. Just kind of how he tells the story in A New Hope,
Yeah. And I appreciate even that there's a history of, even throughout this movie and the last one, Obi-Wan catching Anakin's lightsaber when Anakin loses it. In the abysmal chase scene in Attack of the Clones, they're flying through Coruscant, he loses it, and Anakin Obi-Wan just reaches up and grabs it, and he's like, you dropped this. So I appreciate that there was already like a relationship established of, you know, and Obi-Wan kind of picking up the pieces after Anakin in that regard.
And that even kind of continues with Luke and Leia, or at least Luke, where, you know, then he has to go deal with that. And I know we kind of already touched on that, but that's a whole cool part too. God, I had another thing I wanted to call out there. But I really do love I think of something going back to Mustafar that I just want to touch on too, is I think Cam is right. Like when he does have the high ground and he jumps and it's just that shot of you, like, and like you cannot tell what happens. Like I understand he cuts his limbs. I understand he falls out the air. I understand, like, but I've seen this movie like a dozen times, and every time I'm like, it's unintelligible. Like it is
also,
just unintelligible.
His momentum stops
garbage.
and gets rebounded back, which makes no sense.
Yeah. It was the Force.
Yeah.
The momentum of that jump should have still carried, even if Obi-Wan does this, he still would have gone over.
Yeah. I think he does. Like he lands on the other side and then suddenly he rolls down the hill, I think is what happens.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how he ends up like in the or near the fire. But yeah. And even that, like watching that is like, oh, that is like really, really gruesome. Like seeing what happens to him.
It's
there,
brutal.
which I like. You know, I appreciate because it does set up, you know, how disfigured, you know, we will eventually see him later.
And even the breathing,
Yeah.
like, which is kind of a cool thing because, like, his, like, I believe if I understand this correctly, like his lungs and stuff are damaged too.
Yeah.
So that's why like, he
'cause
needs
when
those
he
parts.
He inhales toxic fumes from
Yeah.
from the volcanic
Ashes and Mustafar.
stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of breathing badly, General Grievous, I just want to circle back to him because when you were mentioning earlier, Logan, that you just don't understand the character. Like,
I think he's fine.
I mentioned like he is really cool from a lightsaber perspective. Having 4 arms, being able to fight with 4 lightsabers at one time is something we obviously had never seen before. So that's really cool. And then the idea of like having that, like he can just put 2 of his arms on like a full spin and like Obi-Wan has to deal with that with 2 other stray lightsabers coming at him is a really cool idea. I will never understand the notion of like making him this weird guy with like a very exposed heart. Yes, there's like battle armor protecting it kind of, but it's really easy to get through. And also, how does he, like, if he is still part humanoid, how does he survive in the vacuum of space? Like what happens there? That's weird stuff.
Oh, that's true.
But yeah, like I ultimately the thing I like is the battle between Grievous and Obi-Wan, because it shows Obi-Wan's resourcefulness as we've continued to see throughout. You know, we saw it in his fight with Jango Fett. We see it here again, where it's like he loses track of his lightsaber. And again, even there, Cody picks it up and grabs it for him or whatever. But I appreciate that, like, he's like, he doesn't say, well, I don't have my lightsaber, so I can't fight now. He's like, a blaster. I grab that and is a crack shot with it. And then even there, like, Grievous dies a very gruesome death that if I'm ever like mad at Chloe, that's the gif I send her is like Grievous's eyes exploding in fire. So yeah, like I appreciate that character for the visual feast he is in this movie and the ideas that he represents, even if the execution I think is lackluster and just another like mid boss to set up throughout the movie. Cam.
So what's something I actually really love about General Grievous is that he was his concept and his inception is a carryover from the fact that George really liked him in Clone Wars, the animated the animated series by the guy who did Samurai Jack.
Yeah.
And the Powerpuff
Which is
Girls and
an
created those.
excellent series.
Oh yeah. And
Grievous
if you
is
want to see
great
like the
there.
full,
Yeah.
he's great in that. And like, but the entire thing is he has that very exposed like organs. He used to and normally didn't. What you're seeing is like his from like that's a prolonged issue starting at the Battle of Coruscant, where when he kidnaps Palpatine, he has to encounter Mace Windu, and Mace Windu, as we mentioned earlier in that Clone Wars series, is the biggest badass in the universe.
Dude,
He literally uses a force grab to try to like keep Grievous there, and when he can't, he literally crushes the protective plating that is normally on his abdomen, like his abdomen, and tears it off and leaves that exposed plating, and actually crushes his lung, his right lung when he does it. And it's this very brutal scene, and also like it's awesome. The entire series is awesome for sure,
fantastic,
but the Battle of Coruscant being as epic as it is, like we get to see the tail end of it in the film, but the entire point of the last few episodes of the Clone Wars cartoon was a lead up into it. So it's a really cool follow through of, hey, we have this really cool character, General Grievous, that we've conceptualized out. George really likes him. What if we make him a through line villain from the Clone Wars cartoon into the film itself, and then he's an antagonist there. That's all incorporated into it, and it really shows like a really great stuff. And we get to see him use multiple lightsabers, and we even see a scene of Dooku training Grievous. So it's not like just a weird throwaway line of, I can use lightsabers because I was trained by Dooku. It's like we had a previous thing for it, and it was heavily advertised for as well. As like, if you want to get the most enjoyment out of Episode 3, watch this Clone Wars cartoon.
Yeah. It was also, I think, trapped behind, or it was like part of Adult Swim and stuff, right? I feel like that's where I remember watching
Network.
it, or just Cartoon Network.
Just Cartoon
Network.
Network.
It was still like cable, and so there are a ton of people. I mean, just like there are a ton of people who went into Solo and were like, "Wait, why is Darth Maul back?" Like there are a ton of people that didn't know that, and especially
it was random if you knew.
I'm looking up. I didn't remember that from the Tartakovsky Clone Wars. And so I'm like looking at the Wikipedia
awesome
now, and it is like that those episodes came out in March of 2005, so like 2 months before the movies. So they were Tartakovsky, sorry. They were working in tandem. And so again, I get that there was like a setup for it. I'm not interested.
I'll also
in
say
it.
Grievous was not even the coolest bad guy out of the Tartakovsky stuff. Deuce, the droid, the bioorganic droid, was way cooler, but also way more OP.
I do like, because I always, and I thought this at the time, like it is very much like that's clearly a prototype for how mechanical Vader is going to become, and like it's clearly setting up kind of all the the pieces for that idea.
It's also a great horror tie-in, following through with the whole vampire thing of the Sith. Like the Sith vampire kind of like connection thing, is that his cape and everything, and also his mask design was supposed to be is actually very Dracula inspired.
Oh yeah. The angles,
which leads into the Frankenstein that entire last scene is like total Frankenstein. Yeah. Frankenstein's monster motifs all over the place. Once again, tying to horror stuff that is also like, it's like funny to actually remember, like, oh yeah, George Lucas is like super into like the old horror films of like the Wolfman and Frankenstein and Dracula and stuff.
Yep.
He's just a total cinema nerd.
Any other favorite sequences, or we haven't really like done a ton of this, but like we can also, if we want to talk about any of the really stupid moments, like yes, we've done a ton of it, but we haven't like dedicated any of the parts of the prequel shows. Yeah, that's thank you. That's what I was definitely getting towards.
Let's talk about Padme and how we went from her being like one of the best parts of Attack of the Clones, being a total badass, Natalie Portman acting her ass off, awesome stuff, to holy crap. Like, and I know there's a lot of scenes that were left on the cutting room floor of her being a senator. She's the one that also works with Organa and rallying what will eventually become the planets that separate into the Rebel Alliance. And we see like, even like I think there might be even a recorded scene where there's like young Mon Mothma.
Yeah. There's I believe it was deleted. I think she still appears like in one brief scene in the movie. But the majority of her stuff was cut for this. But then she was like cast again to return in Rogue One.
Yeah. So like, there's tons of stuff in regards to that like I'm really upset, because of course they wanted, like, once again, this film had to get to a place. It had a lot of content, and it, like you said, Trevor, there's a 4-hour cut of it somewhere where there's just a lot more stuff to it. But it sucks that seeing Natalie Portman's amazing portrayal gets sidelined into just a really kind of just a really whiny wife character. And I hate that.
I just don't even get she didn't need to die, especially because you have Return of the Jedi of Leia saying yes, I remember, I have memories of my mother, and sure, now you can basically say, oh well, she was talking about Bail Organa's wife or whatever, and maybe she dies early or something, but you could have written a version of this where she gives birth, and then is just the twins are still split up to keep everybody safe, and she and Leia go into hiding while Luke goes off elsewhere. That could have been a thing.
What's a great cover for who the father of the child is, right?
Obi-Wan.
She's pregnant, Obi-Wan, but also Bail Organa. See, we only find out Bail Organa's married in a single moment. Yeah. It's my wife and I have always wanted to adopt a baby girl. Instead of it just being listen, we'll say I'm the father of your daughter. It'll clear up suspicion on that, but then again, you get this whole what happens with Darth Vader, etc. Problem with that. But there's a lot of stuff they could have done differently about it. Honestly, they could have just had it been oh no, her windpipe's been crushed. She was exposed to a lot of toxic fumes on Mustafar.
Yeah,
she's in actually really terrible shape. It's surprising she survived this long.
It really is.
She has an incredibly strong will to live to see her children be born. And they could have totally turned it on that and been and then have Palpatine tell Vader the truth. In your anger, you killed her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been a great moment. But no, we have to be no, but Anakin really didn't do that. She died of a broken heart. Oh, that's such nonsense. Such nonsense. So bad.
But she lives just long enough to give them their names.
And also say, they're still good at him. It's no.
No.
I watched him murder children.
Did he murder a whole bunch of indigenous people of Tatooine in the last movie without because it's not canon or I don't think they ever made it formally canon that Dooku paid them to or whatever. And then he just murdered a whole bunch of kids in this one. So no, maybe there's not children still good in him.
Children he had sworn to protect and raise. Like a father.
They thought, when he showed up, they thought they were safe.
Yeah.
They're oh, Master Anakin's here. This is it. He's gonna get us out of here. And
Master Skywalker, what are we gonna do to get out of here? And just so good. That scene still still slaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
That scene still slaps super fucking hard when he does that. It's so good.
I mean, yeah, it is. There were definitely little bits and pieces that I had forgotten about. I had forgotten about Obi-Wan and Anakin and Yoda going back to the temple to cut off the message or whatever.
Signal.
For some reason that had just morphed into a Clone Wars moment or something like that for me. So him actually seeing the holo vid of Anakin slashing people and stuff was oh yeah, that's a way more impactful choice. So I'm glad it's not suspicion or whatever, and we actually get that.
But also that scene's way too short. For his reaction, the reaction time he's given. I mean, we don't really get to see a lot of that.
But that's not the reaction we care about. We don't want to see him reacting to a holoscreen. We want to see him reacting to Anakin at the end and the "you were my brother" Anakin. We want that scene. So I'm fine with.
But I want both.
I'm fine. But what's the reaction going to be? Watching the video, just is he supposed to just turn and suddenly start emoting to Yoda of but we're brothers, he can't have done this. I know he can't have done this. This must be a lie. This must be something that I just don't think that whatever is in your mind would have been I don't think it would have been as impactful as what you're thinking. Anything else from you, Logan?
Yeah, I mean, so first off, Yoda and Obi-Wan going to the temple together is a Star Wars Episode 3, the video game mission. I'm just trying to give a shout out to that. That's what I always think of when I think of that scene. I'm always oh, I did this.
Same here.
I stopped the... Yeah.
I was oh yeah, I forgot this is actual movie scene. I just did it in the game.
I always think about the guards outside because I've had to kill them so many times.
Yeah.
Guards. And also, the storming the Jedi temples level is super awesome. You don't get to
Yeah.
kill the children.
It's-
Though. They don't
yeah,
let
it's
you
all
kill
great.
the younglings.
I do not remember this, but since you guys brought it up, maybe maybe you do. The PS2 Xbox game of this movie had an alternate ending in which Darth Vader kills Obi-Wan. Moments
Yes.
later, Darth Sidious and the
Yes.
clone troopers land on Mustafar, and Sidious congratulates Vader for killing Obi-Wan, and that the galaxy is now theirs. Darth Sidious presents Vader with his new lightsaber. Vader betrays Sidious and stabs him through the upper torso with his new lightsaber, and Sidious collapses to the floor dead, and Vader proclaims the galaxy is his. Like, I remember,
Yes.
I remember a similar beat in the Force Unleashed games. But I did not remember.
Yeah.
I did not remember them changing this one.
It's
In
You
part
can have
probably
a-
because
depends on
I
who
was
you
playing.
chose to.
Yeah,
You were playing Obi-Wan?
I'm saying I was playing. I was probably playing Lego Star Wars at this time because, again, as I've brought up, I think in the past, the Lego Star Wars of the original Lego Star Wars game was of the prequel trilogy and came out like 3 weeks before the movie did, because we didn't care about spoilers back then in the way that we do now. So
Well, it's also, I don't know if you guys ever heard this, but the CD for Phantom Menace, the last track is like Qui-Gon. It's called like Qui-Gon's death, and it came out before the movie ever came out.
yeah, I mentioned that in I think week 1 that I had seen that from the CD listing, and I remember that being like I remember being in, it was either 7th or 8th grade, and the band room that we were in, and I remember like reading that like reading the track listing on the CD or something like that. Like I have a spatial awareness of where I was when I found that information out, and was like, why did they tell us this? Weird stuff.
Otherwise, no. I mean, otherwise, I would say.
And also, just real quick for you, Cameron, the next trivia beat down is Julius Caesar was a major influence behind Supreme Chancellor Emperor Palpatine.
You mean Augustus
Yeah.
Caesar?
No, I'm saying Julius
they probably
Caesar
mean
is
Julius
the
Caesar.
is the
Julius
IMDb
Caesar,
trivia.
His
point.
arc also makes sense. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
But like, I think that
They could have just got the wrong
It's-
Caesar wrong.
I
in
think they got the
trivia.
wrong Caesar because Julius Caesar's arc is not at all.
Well,
like Palpatine.
37 out of 44 people found that interesting, Cameron. So fuck you.
I think that like. Yeah, I mean, I think the movie. I mean, now like I also realize that like we're pressed for time because we got to get out. But like, yeah, I mean, we can just kind of start diving into how we feel overall about the movie. But I'll say like the last thing I'll give a shout out to that's like a specific scene, would just be something Frank kind of already touched on a lot, which is like how great the opening of the movie is so good, especially if you watched Clone Wars, like the animated like series that came out beforehand, because the end of that series literally leads like almost like second for second right into the beginning of the movie. Like it like is almost like a seamless
It does.
transition if you watch them like back to back, and so that's really cool.
Yeah, and then we eventually start getting the Clone Wars recreating moments from like the opening scenes on the ship. Yeah, everything coming full circle. Yeah, let's go ahead then, and we'll go around the table and do our report card grading, where we grade the film from A+ to F. Let me pull up my doc here. Frank, what grade do you want to give Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith?
I was originally kind of going into it with thinking it would probably be like a C+ because I knew I was probably going to like it, at least as, in that same kind of tier. And I know, like I said before, this has always been my favorite. So I kind of was assumed to be in that same kind of tier, but especially after rewatching it and talking about it, and just, it's a lot of fun and it has a lot of great stuff in it. So I'm just going to say it's a B. Like, I'll just give it a B for Revenge of the Sith.
All right. Cameron.
It is a C+ for me.
Okay. C+. Let me see. What do I want to give this? Let me scrolling through, kind of in the hierarchy of things. Yeah, I think I'll split the difference between you guys, and I'm gonna go with a B- for this one, because it's definitely one. Before we started talking about it, I probably was a little cooler on it, but
Same.
us spending the last, hour, almost 2 hours, just kind of like talking about the things we enjoyed about it. Yes, there are other things that are stupid in there and that I hate, but like there's still a lot of fun in this movie that I'm able to kind of pull from. So yeah, B- for me. And because at the end of the day, Star Wars still can be fun, even when it's really stupid. And Logan, round us out. What grade do you want to give this one?
Yeah, so I'm gonna give it a B minus as well. Trevor took what I was gonna say. I think that this
can
movie
both think
to
the
me
same thing,
is, yeah, I think this movie to me is like such a great example of like the James Bond grading metric I use, where it's like it is. I don't know if I would say the movie is like great or fantastic, but the movie is definitely, I think, a lot of fun, and like that carries a lot of weight. There are things I do not like. Again, it has my least favorite sequence of any of the first 6 movies, for example. But I think what works and like the amount of fun you have and like how colorful and vibrant and how truly like alien and galactic it feels, like this is the one movie in the prequels that feels kind of alien and galactic-y, in terms of like the people you're seeing and the cultures you're seeing, the worlds you're seeing. Carry enough weight, yeah, to get it to a B minus, and it's easily, like I thought going into it, I'm really happy that it's been like reconfirmed, it's easily the best of the prequel films.
That you just talking about the like the galactic nature of it just reminded me, like, this is probably the first time I caught that early on in the film Sidious sends all of the separatist leaders to Mustafar to protect them, and then sends Anakin there to murder them all and just take out any of his opposition. Like, for some reason I had just never like picked up on that chess piece that he plays in this until this one. I thought it was like, oh, that's like, you know, like it was one of those things. Like obviously we see it happen and whatnot, but it was just one of those things that like I never saw the pieces being put in place, and it was more just like, oh, like, yeah, of course Anakin's gonna murder these people because Anakin is the bad guy now. But yeah, I appreciated that little line of setup. So in the ranking of things, just as a refresher, Return of the Jedi was our number 1, Empire Strikes Back number 2, A New Hope number 3, and then Phantom Menace was number 4, and Attack of the Clones was number 5. I think are we all good with making that number 3 as the best of the prequels, or anybody want to make an argument against that? But still not.
I mean, I don't have an argument. I don't have an argument against it or like for it, in that I would think that I could convince you guys. I think that I've said it before, like episode 1's my preferred film of the prequels.
Even still watching them again?
Yeah.
I find that so interesting.
Yeah, no, like, honestly, I don't think I, like, hearing you guys talk about it, the problems I have with this film are, I think the difference is that I think that the problems of, it's by far, Attack of the Clones is by far, in my opinion, the worst Star Wars film.
I don't agree, but
that's fact.
One of the sequel trilogy is the worst for you, Logan?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that. We'll get into that sometime in the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Future spoilers.
I will say that for me, as cool as the cool things are, and like I think that there's some really rad stuff in this film, it never hits the like really incredible highs that I think a lot, like the really great parts of episode 1 do for me. And rather than like episode 1, I would compare it to being like dying from being hit by like blunt force. In the comparison to episode 3, I feel like it's like 1,000 cuts. Like the things I have are like small problems, but the way that they add up over time, and I really felt this especially as it was coming to a close, and we are getting some like of these like montage moments at the end of it. Kind of be like, this is where things are at now in the galaxy. As we got to that point, I'm kind of like reflecting on the trilogy as like this prequel trilogy as a whole, but especially this film. Like the problems I have are so like I have so many problems with this film, but they're so minor and stupid to even kind of like bring up all of them. I'm not going to waste your guys' time bringing up things that were like I didn't like or I had a problem with that are just so minuscule in comparison to like what we wanted to talk about, which was clearly we want to talk about the really cool stuff in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially in reflection of last week where we talked about all the really dumb stuff.
I mean, we tried to thinking back on it, like we could have, for all 3 of these, I would say, and that's what I was like alluding to earlier, is like we could have, instead of doing the like what are your favorite moments from these movies, like we could have talked way more, I'm sure, about all the dumb shit in these movies. But at the end of the day, like that just is, you know, for like middle-aged white guys being grumpy about, and maybe not middle-aged, but
none of us are middle-aged. Yeah,
none of us are middle-aged yet. But like, yeah,
I'm getting there, guys. Like there are plenty of YouTube videos for that kind of thing if you want them on the internet. So
yeah,
I didn't need us to be one of them.
And I did not want to make this episode about that. Like, even though I have all those complaints and problems with it, at the end of the day, I think that the highs and really great things that I personally get from, you know, I love the idea that this all started with a trade dispute, because when you look at history, you'd be surprised the way things fall out from something as simple as a trade dispute and a blockade.
A trade route.
Yeah. Like when you,
I will say,
yeah, that's really where it comes down to, is like the things that I know I distinctly love about episode 1 that a lot of people either just don't care about or actively dislike, will always be something like, I know I can't win that argument against people. But so for me, and like I said, I don't know why I'm spending so much time talking about this, when I know that I'm going to be outvoted on it, and I'm okay with that. Where I put it, so our ranking right now is Return of the Jedi, Empire, New Hope. I would then put Phantom Menace, then Revenge of the Sith, and then what's that trench in the middle of the ocean? The
Marianas Trench.
The Marianas Trench. The Marianas Trench 2 times over, and then Attack of the Clones. You
would throw Attack of the Clones in the flaming whirlpool in the Gulf of Mexico from that pipeline break,
in the hopes that it would somehow annihilate it from existence.
Yeah.
Like there's something magical about it that would do that. Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Go ahead, Logan.
So yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say real quickly, like, I think I don't necessarily hate the analogy that Cameron gave of this movie being a death by 1,000 cuts versus a blunt force trauma of a Phantom Menace, except for I don't think, like, it's not a blunt force trauma where you're going 200 miles an hour in a Ferrari and there's like something just like stops in tracks. It's like you're like walking down the street going 2 miles an hour and you get hit by a blunt force trauma blow. Like you're never really, Phantom Menace never gets going, I think. Like it never builds any momentum until literally the last like 20 minutes of the movie. So like it never builds up that pace. Like you have a 2-hour period that's good with like one maybe great sequence with the pod race, but then the rest is like pretty middling, I think, and like not that high energy. And then the end is like pretty intense, but like there's so much before that like doesn't build up the pace, right? Because like I'm with you, Cam. I love the nerdy politics shit. I just think we don't get enough of that. Even I'm the guy who says we don't get enough of it in the Phantom Menace.
I would agree.
And that everything around the nerdy politics shit is really plain. Like it's not even that it's like necessarily bad, it's just very low energy. Right? Like I don't think Phantom Menace is a bad movie. I just think that it's like so low energy and chill to the very end that like I think the frantic nature and high energy like pace of Revenge of the Sith I find more appealing in terms of like I'm being asked to sit down to watch one of these movies on like a weekend day at 2 p.m. I'm gonna pick Revenge of the Sith because it's just more exciting, more like stuff is happening.
And I think that's totally fair. I would pick, and that's why I would say I would pick episode 1. Like, and I think, and like I said, I know that I have these quasi unpopular / just like not really, no, just unpopular. Like it's an unpopular opinion that I have that I think Phantom Menace is better than Revenge of the Sith, and I understand that. And I hear like when we talk about like the things that we said tonight, I 100% like hear where you guys are coming from on it, but like that's where I rank it. So I do think I'm outvoted though. I think we can kind of settle on it. I'm outvoted. We're gonna like the ranking will be on.
Just to like finalize that, where would you put it, Frank?
Oh, I'm with you guys. I would put it after the original trilogy, but at the top of the prequels.
Okay, and yeah, we will go ahead and slot it in there at number 4. Of the 6 so far, and then I'm gonna be very interested where the sequel trilogy goes, because
that's That's the
Like,
messy trilogy. Yeah.
I've already talked with like a couple of you guys about a lot of things on those movies. So, yeah. In particular, like, because
I remember the 4-hour
conversations
spoiler
around.
cast of Rise of Skywalker. I'm remembering that.
I don't think it was that long.
It felt long.
Well, Rise of Skywalker will be a whole thing in of itself, yeah. And I'm guessing we're probably all somewhere in alignment on Rise of Skywalker, maybe just to varying degrees of disliking it. But I think The Force Awakens and Last Jedi are going to be more interesting conversations where we're maybe not all on the same page on that one. But anyway, back to the rest of the segments here. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this one. We are back to the series just going like kind of chronologically until you get to Rise of Skywalker, and then it's like, hey, you've watched the rest of these movies, maybe go check out The Mandalorian, and then maybe go check out The Phantom Menace if you want, because so Mandalorian replaces Attack of the Clones in this one. And then lastly, extracurriculars, anybody watching anything else on Disney Plus? Frank, is it just you and me and the Loki train, I'm guessing?
Yep, yeah, I've still just been watching Loki. I just caught the last episode earlier today, and it was awesome.
Okay. Cam?
Nice. I've actually, in my duties as an uncle recently, I've been watching quite a bit of Bluey. So.
Okay. I've heard good things about that.
It's a weird show, man.
It, yeah.
It's extremely Australian. It is extremely Australian, down to its like everything about it, which makes it fun, but also very confusing because I have no idea what half the things they're talking about are because they're using deep Australian slang. Like, this was not meant to be a show for like the rest of the world, but somehow the rest of the world has adopted it. The mom's name is Chili, which is always just like Bluey Chili. Like, I get like that, but then but spelt like chili the food. So it's a thing. Okay. Anyway, like I said, it's a weird show.
There you go. In addition to my usual rigmarole, I hopped back in, was continuing through DuckTales, and I got to, in season 3, there is a 2-parter that is like so heavily influenced by Darkwing Duck, and just like throws in all of the Darkwing Duck it can. And I was like, that's awesome. The part 1 ended, and I was like, yes, I hate that this show is done, and I only have like a handful more episodes to watch because they just give so much love and reverence to the Saturday morning like lineup or Saturday afternoon lineup that I grew up with. Even like Darkwing Duck was never like one of my shows, but I know it well enough to love the care and love and attention that they're putting into their love of Darkwing Duck. So that show just continues to be amazing. Everybody should watch the DuckTales series because it is friggin' phenomenal.
It's fantastic.
I caught a couple episodes from the first season when they kind of first rebooted it, and I definitely recommend it as well. Like, I mean, I love the original, but I thought it's such a good show.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, everybody, for joining me to talk about the final of the prequel trilogy, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give some love to there, Cam?
Yes, there is. I want to give a special shout out to an article over on Uppercut Crit. They put out an article from a really awesome writer over there about 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. I'm bringing it up because it came up today, it got published today, and just brought me back to like my memories of playing through that game and how great it was. And I honestly don't have anything else to talk about. So
okay. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give some love to there, Frank?
Yeah, just a quick shout out to our other podcast, That Nerdy Site Show. We took last week off because of the holiday, but our previous episode before that is still an F9 spoiler cast, so I'll still give a shout out to that. I still recommend everybody go check it out, There
you go. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie. What do you want to give some love to there, Logan?
I broke my phone case, first off.
Oh, no.
I will give a shout out to... again, the youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Right now, you can go check out Trevor's Let's Plays of Emily's Away 3 going live. They're very good. I enjoy everything involved with Trevor playing the Emily's Away games. They're very funny. Trevor is very self-aware. It's pretty great. Otherwise, I will give a shout out to the F9 conversation as well. Even if I maybe don't agree that you should go see F9, go listen to the spoiler cast at the very least, and hear the guys' thoughts on it.
It has John Cena in it. Go watch it. It's great.
I thought he did
Not
really
enough
good.
for me at all.
I love John Cena. So
John Cena.
This is the first time I've seen him act
I mean,
in anything.
I love John Cena when he's not like
He's
when
great
he
in
has a
Trainwreck.
spine
Yeah.
and when he has a spine and isn't kowtowing towards China. But I digress.
Fair.
Damn.
You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will give twitch.tv/Rev Cabot a shout out because I tuned into Cameron's No Pixel stream this week, and it's like the first time I've really watched anybody doing the No Pixel roleplay stuff. And while I think it is ridiculously dumb and tedious, Cameron really has some fun with it. So
That's true.
and he sang the first verse of "You Got to Know When to Hold 'Em, Know When to Fold 'Em," but working in tow truck lyrics.
That's true. I did
He did that like 13 times.
because I was towing. That's the song I sing when I tow.
The same little like 2 or 3 lines of that song over and over again.
That sounds like, yeah.
And I was just
God
like,
bless
oh.
you, Cameron.
And then he encountered somebody at a burger shot playing a guitar later who was doing the same kind of thing but with some other song. I don't remember which one it was, but I was like, Cameron, you should sing him your tow truck song. Because it was just,
God.
it is a very dumb little thing, but people have fun with it and more power to them. So yeah, shout out to twitch.tv/Rev Cabot. Whenever Cam goes back and does some more No Pixel stuff, I'll try and hop in and tune in if I'm free.
I will do the same, yeah.
Other than that, you can find all of us over at That Nerdy Site, where you can find all the latest stuff from us at That Nerdy Site or thatnerdysite.com or youtube.com/thatnerdysite, as Logan pointed out. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you do feel so inclined, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, class dismissed, and may the force be with you.